Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, SuccessFactors Secrets Boosting the ROI of Your Investment. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. First of all, my name is Ashton Plisquelic. I'm a marketing analyst for Kula Partners. Secondly, in your attendee panel, you'll see a couple different options. One of them is for questions. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them into that box and we will answer them throughout the presentation. Our two speakers today will be David Nesper, Managing Partner of Sales and Marketing. Before he started focusing on sales and marketing, he was very hands-on with software development, configuration, implementation, and business process optimization. He has been a partner with SAP since 1995 and SuccessFactors since 2012. He's played a key role in multiple global SAP and SuccessFactors implementations, as well as smaller scale rollouts. Troy Catlett is the Operations Director and Solutions Architect with Kula Partners. He has over 20 years experience in technology and human resources business processes as well. As with his operations director and solutions architect role, he manages professional service operations and client delivery for SAP SuccessFactors implementations and new product development. What we will cover today is how to derive value from your SuccessFactors implementation, example from a real SuccessFactors customer story, understanding why support is key to a strong ROI within your SuccessFactors system, and how to sustain and prove strong ROI from your SuccessFactors investment. So with that, I will hand it over to Dave Nesper.
Yeah, thanks, Ashton. And so let me give you a brief overview of Kula Partners. So as I'm sure you can read the slide, we've been, as Kula, we've been in existence for about 5 years. But before that, there's essentially 3 of us that started the company. We've known each other for 10 plus years, probably 15 years. And we have been associated in some fashion with, personally, in my case, since like mid-90s. And in the other 2 guys' case, just a few years after that. So we have a very strong relationship with SAP, have had that through the years, and we continue to nourish that and reinforce that. So because the background goes back to the mid-90s, we have very strong, historically on-premise background. And then since right about the time when SuccessFactors was being acquired by SAP, we were doing a project, and so we, an SAP legacy client, for a legacy client, and we kind of got, fast-forwarded or catapulted, I should say, into the SuccessFactors world. So at that time, we retrained, kind of retooled ourselves. We, of course, augmented our staff with folks that had the SuccessFactors background, and then we, retrained a lot of our folks from the SAP on-prem world. So on the bottom of the slide or mid-slide, there are a few of the SuccessFactors clients that we are currently engaged with, and there are many more, but we were constrained with real estate, so this is what we're showing you. And at the bottom of the screen, we make a mention to Kula SOS, which is a service offering which I will be giving you much more detail about in just about 30 seconds. We also have developed a software solution for competency management called Kahuna. And we also have a solution for the on-prem world to kind of bring that up to date with respect to user interface and also process automation, and that's called Mana. And then as Ashton, I think, mentioned previously, we are an SAP SuccessFactors partner, and within about the last 3 months or so, we achieved the gold level, which is a function of customer feedback, and so we're worked very hard to get that, and we're very proud of that. Okay, so deriving value from your implementation, that's what it's all about. And you're going to see themes in this webinar from what I'm going to be talking about, and also Troy, and also one of our lead SuccessFactors people, Eduardo Martins. And those themes are about customer engagement and business process. And then of course, with that focus, deriving return on investment, ROI from your implementation, from your investment. So to get a little bit more detail into support and optimization, we kind of got into these businesses organically. We were, the bulk of our experience was all about implementing SAP and then SuccessFactors software products. And then, supporting within, towards the end of the project and then beyond the project, obviously you have to support your customer to make sure things are working well. But beyond that, for a more longer term support, it really wasn't in our roadmap to do that. We got into that business because we had so many customers come back to us and say, this is great, implementation is what we expected, but now we need some ongoing support. So that's really what got us more interested in support. And then optimization, kind of the same way. We work very closely with SAP, and SAP through the years has had some clients that have kind of fell off the support bandwagon. Their business processes changed, and the technical solution did not change with it. And so we got into, along with SAP and SuccessFactors, into the optimization service. So what is a typical optimization scenario? And we'll get into, as I go through this, we'll get into more and more detail. But typically what we're looking at here is a customer that's been using SuccessFactors anywhere from a few months to multiple years. In one case, we're engaged with a customer that was over 9 years using SuccessFactors. Well, through that time period, business processes change, and you have to reevaluate, and you have to stay very connected to the quarterly releases, and that's a significant effort. So what happens when we get involved with a customer that is looking to optimize their implementation and their set of business processes, is that we will do an assessment. And the first step is about assess and remediate. That's the way we term it. And so the assessment is typically very tactical. So we want to be very detailed in that assessment. We want to look at what currently exists for the client, and then what works, what doesn't work. And of course, what works, that's great. The more interesting part of that is what doesn't work, and then what can we do about it? And typically these things also have to be, they're very budget conscious, because this is not necessarily something that was budgeted for, that the customer might have to spend some additional investment in whatever, fixing something that doesn't work, or making some very key and usually pretty small enhancements. So there's always an eye on budget, and that's all the more reason to keep it tactical. So one of the key outputs of the assessment is a plan for remediation. And I want to stress that these are always very tactical and very detailed. So once you get into the remediation, now you have a very clear estimate of what the cost is. And when you get into remediation, you want to execute on that plan that was derived during the assessment. And you don't want to deviate from it. You want, and here, let's talk about ROI. This is where you start to realize ROI. And with that return on investment also comes, you're gaining some credibility. So the next step after that is strategic roadmap. So once you can assess, you can remediate, you can gain some credibility, you start seeing some ROI, then it's time to step back, not too far, but a bit, and take a broader look and see what's on the roadmap. We've fixed some problems at this point, we're gaining some ROI, what are the next steps? And now we can afford to be more strategic. Now we can afford to get into the normal budgeting process and the normal budgeting cycle of the company, right? And so that is kind of the sequence. I'm going to go ahead and we're now going to, I'm going to introduce a real life example, and I'm also going to introduce a colleague of ours. So the San Francisco 49ers, they're a client that we got involved with after they had gone through their proper implementation. And it wasn't that long after. I would say it was probably 6 to 9 months after that. So they had gone through the implementation, and their implementation mainly consisted of onboarding, EC, of course, recruiting, and also performance and goals. And of course, there were integrations, wrapped around, their core EC implementation. That was the scope of their implementation. Their state, when we first met them, they were not in a good place. Their business processes were still quite heavily dependent on manual intervention. And of course, that's something that we all tried to minimize. And that all, of course, gets back to the business process, defining the business process and minimizing those manual handoffs whenever possible. And of course, thereby recognizing ROI. So they were not real happy campers. So we came in and did, the steps that I just described. We did the assessment, came up with a plan, and then went into those remediations. So again, we try to define with them pain points, what works, what doesn't work. Okay, that's interesting. Let's deal with that. And then I'm going to turn it over now to Eduardo Martins, who is our SuccessFactors lead consultant. He is multi-talented, and for this webinar, he's going to focus on EC and the remediation effort that we did at San Francisco 49ers. So, Eduardo.
Yeah, hello, Dave. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can, Eduardo.
All right, great. Yeah, so the case with the San Francisco 49ers, they had a lot of, I could say, a lot of small issues that were making their life really tough to work with the system, because they had a lot of issues with kind of ensuring that the data is accurate in the system, because they had to make sure that, for one example, like if you are assigned to a specific job code or job classification in your employee record, you gotta be assigned to a specific pay group, for instance, and those kind of things they were pretty much doing manually, because they didn't have the system to help them with those, and the system is of course capable of automating these type of things. So they had several issues like that where the system was not helping them with fields or information validation and things like that the system could help a lot. So they were spending a lot of time with this kind of maintenance. And also they had some issues with, for instance, workflows and transactions in the system where they were not working or not configured as it should. So they had like a lot of manual steps for defining who should be the approver. They were not using like the dynamic capabilities of the system for getting who should approve each type of transaction. So we worked with them to map all these items and what would be the solution for each one of those. And we created with them a lot of business rules in EC for defaulting these fields, or verifying or validating the data and getting messages or error messages or warnings back to the user to make sure that the user is completing the right information there, or the information that was expected to be. And also we enhanced their workflows to make sure that they have the correct approvers depending on the type of transaction, the type of employee, and etc. And we had also some other kind of a little bit larger requests. They have a PTO request and approval process that before we started to work with them was pretty much manual. So they were handling all the PTO requests outside the system, and they were just entering the system like after the PTO was approved, they went back and added these PTOs in the system manually because the workflow and the requests were not working as they wanted to be. They had a lot of issues with PTO accruals calculations because the way it was configured before in SuccessFactors, the accruals was not being calculated correctly, were never matching what they had in their payroll system. So based on that, we reviewed all this PTO process with them end to end from the accruals that they do in their payroll system, going through the requests and approvals in SuccessFactors, using the correct permissions, workflows, eligibility for PTO types, depending on the job level of the employee, for instance. And then after the PTO is approved or even canceled, we also build the automatic integration back to their payroll system. So they don't, before that, they had to manually extract like a report from SuccessFactors. Then they had to format this report in their payroll layout file, and manually upload it in their payroll system. So we built this integration to do that automatically, so they don't have to worry about that anymore. And then the PTO integration is automatic between SuccessFactors and payroll.
And Eduardo, and was that was using the Boomi middleware platform, that integration for payroll, right?
Right, correct. Yeah, they use Boomi as the middleware for their integrations. Yeah, that is correct. So yeah, so that was the kind of things, and we did pretty much like similar things for these other modules that Dave was talking about earlier. We did the same thing for recruiting, for PM performance and goals, and for their other integrations, for onboarding as well. So that was kind of the approach for all modules.
And also, Eduardo, I know you can comment on this. I know they had implemented recruiting management. I think the sequence of that was they did recruiting management before they did EC, and weren't they then having some issues with the integration, largely due to just because they followed that particular sequence of implementation?
I believe that what happened is that they implemented recruiting before, and then the implementation or during the implementation project, they never came back to actually review the integration between recruiting, onboarding, and EC. So that was definitely an item that we had to work on with them and make it work better or the way that they expected it to be. So. Yeah, we had to review like the mappings and fields between EC and onboarding, how this process flow from recruiting to onboarding, and after the employee is onboarded, we integrate that data back to EC for creating the employee record in EC. So we had to work on this all end-to-end process with them and mapping the right fields and values and make it work. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. Very good. So at this point, I think we're going to do some Q&A. Is that right, Ashton?
Yes. If you have any questions around what Eduardo just discussed, 49ers, feel free to put that question in the questions box. I also want to point out that we have a 49ers case study located in the handout section. So if you're looking for a little bit more information around a specific area, you can download that from the handout section on your attendee panel. So we'll open up the floor for questions if you would like to put one in the question box. Dave, while we're waiting for those, we could just go ahead and move on to the next section, and if we get one, we'll just stop and answer it.
Okay, yeah, very good. As Ashton said, all questions are welcome, so please submit, and we'll address as best we can. Okay, so then we will now move into and have Troy give you a little insight about support. Troy?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, great. Great, hi, everyone. So, as you know, technology is constantly changing, and business processes must evolve and adjust to keep up with the pace of this new technology. So with dedicated support resources, you're able to leverage expertise and experience of certified consultants who implement the solution on a daily basis and support other customers. I feel our consultants are in a unique position to truly understand best practices, provide guidance, and support customers in their decision-making process. And this expertise is going to ensure operational excellence and continuous improvement in your HCM solution. So when I talk about operational excellence, we want to make sure that there is continuity and consistency in your business processes. We try to employ an effective incident management process and use support tools that are going to ensure that issues are captured and tracked through resolution. So whether you encounter a defect or you may need help with a production issue, it could just be a question or it could be an enhancement request. We use the same process to capture input from customers and then track those things all the way through to completion. Okay. And in addition, really on an ongoing basis, we can help to monitor the overall solution and identify opportunities for continuous improvement. That could come in the form of assessing new features or looking for new ways to accommodate a business requirement, which, as I said, things are constantly changing. And just as an example, I know in a discussion that Eduardo and I actually had with a customer yesterday, they were looking to take advantage of some new functionality. But what they had to realize is that they first had to implement a change to the underlying structure before they could realize the benefits of the new functionality. So, so I think that's critical and a key to being able to kind of get that continuous improvement and be able to take advantage of new functionality. So when I talk about new functionality, that relates to release management. And as you know, SAP releases, fixes, updates, and new functionality in quarterly release cycles. The changes are either universal changes that are going to apply across the system, and you get them whether you like it or not, or opt-ins, which an administrator or a consultant can turn on the functionality through provisioning. So the changes are first released into your preview environment. We're able to test the functionality on the new release, and then also assess the impact before anything goes into production. If you've ever seen the release notes for a new release, they're quite extensive, and having consultants there to help you interpret the changes and how they may affect your solution, I think, is really critical. With an understanding of your environment and that that support partnership, we often do high-level impact analysis of changes for customers. We can assess new functionality and suggest features that you may want to take advantage of. And then if you do choose to take advantage of a new piece of functionality, it's always good to have an idea of what kind of effort it's going to take. Sometimes it's not a simple thing that you can just turn on. There may be a change request, or even an extensive project that we'd have to engage in order to take advantage of the new functionality. As I mentioned before, we are there to support testing efforts as customers are assessing the new releases. And then I think another key is to help customers develop communications to the organization when as changes are released. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about customer engagement, and customer engagement is really key to a successful HCM solution and to any type of ongoing support and enrichment. It's truly a partnership, and SAP releases a lot of new functionality, but you really must stay engaged in order to realize the benefits of it. So lastly, in the spirit of return on investment, I know that cost savings are, yes.
Hey, I have a question
Mm-hmm.
that just came in. So on the customer engagement piece, I have a question that says, how much customer engagement is actually required from the client side?
Good question.
Dave, you can answer that, or?
Yeah, I'll jump in, Troy, and then
Sure.
I'll let you go. So
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and this is something that I see a lot of because of what I was explaining before about the optimization. So typically we get involved, and SAP pulls us in frequently with customers that have been on SAP for years, and in a lot of cases their implementation predates the acquisition of SuccessFactors by SAP. And because of that shift in culture after SAP bought the company, and the release cycle became, I think, more predictable. At one time, SuccessFactors, I think, used to release 12 times a year, monthly. So that was shortened to quarterly. But the customer engagement is very key. I have also worked with some customers that didn't even have a test instance. So the first thing we did is make sure you get the test instance, make sure you know how to manage, and make sure you have proper configuration in your test instance. And of course, you need good data. And then, it's all about being able to preview the releases, as Troy was explaining. You've got to have a good environment where you can look at that. How much engagement? I am not ignoring that question. So you should have someone, that should be someone's job, not their full-time job, but it should be part of their job, internal to the customer, to be aware of that release schedule, to preview the release notes, and then make sure that test environment is ready to receive that previewed release, and then have some kind of a plan to do some testing to make sure that release is not going to break any of your current configuration. And then of course the other decisions that are involved is some of the enhancements that are coming with that release are automatic. You don't have a decision. They're going to be there. The others, you can opt in or opt out. And Troy, I'll let you embellish that some.
Yeah. So, the level of engagement, I think it's very high, as Dave said. We typically work with a customer point of contact or multiple points of contact that are very intimately involved in supporting the application of assessing the quarterly release notes, and we really there's really two ways that we'll kind of go through those things. Either having a one-on-one with a customer where they would actually go through the release notes and identify the things that they may want to take advantage of, or that they have questions about. The other is us actually pushing out information. So sometimes that can be in the form of an email that would go out to all customers, or something that we may post on our support desk website that gives some of the folks with a lot of expertise in a particular area kind of a heads up on things that are coming, and their thoughts on that release and how it might impact their customers that we have.
Yeah, very good. Any other questions, Ashton?
Not at this time. We can go ahead and move forward.
Okay. So in terms of return on investment, I think cost savings are always a big driver when moving applications to the cloud. And I think to realize the cost savings, you really need to have an effective and efficient support process to keep those ongoing operations running smoothly. support is also a key element in maximizing the value of your investment. As I said, sustaining your current operations and taking advantage of new functionality. You're able to ensure effective, efficient business processes and increased employee engagement. So Ashton, maybe you could go back to the slide on the 49ers, because I'm going to talk about the 49ers a little bit. So we have an ongoing support arrangement with the 49ers, as David mentioned. We initially went through assessment and remediation, and then going forward, we have an ongoing support arrangement with them. So we support all of the SuccessFactors modules that they implemented, in addition to integrations that they have with other applications. They use our support desk to submit support tickets, and as I said, sometimes that's just a question, an enhancement request, or a true defect that needs immediate attention. And we're able to prioritize those things and indicate the urgency of those issues as they come in. We meet with them on a bi-weekly basis to discuss the status of open tickets, to talk about enhancements or project work that's taking place. We review issues and also discuss some opportunities for improvement. So I think with that open dialogue, a lot of times we're able to really find some solutions to some pain points that we can address on an immediate basis. The consultants have in-depth knowledge of their operations. So as questions and issues arise on a day-to-day basis, we're able to address them. And also, when we're talking about the impact of the quarterly releases, it's very common that we'll go through the releases and give them advice on new functionality, etc. So sometimes the path to the solution is beyond what we can provide, and often we are communicating with SAP support for a particular issue, logging a ticket on 49ers behalf, or working with them to log issues with SAP and to track those things. And then we also, with other application vendors that they have integrations with, we often are in communication with those folks too. So really just working with them in a partnership, to ensure sustainability of their operations. So that's all I had.
Excellent. Any questions popping up, Ashton?
Not yet. We can move forward.
Okay. Okay, so how to prove ROI. So we have a few bullet points here. So, the things that you can measure obviously are the number of users. And we have a number of clients, that when they rolled out to, in some cases, a smaller population, and then expanded that. So as that user base increases, and of course you have to monitor the feedback, it's a very good indication of ROI. And that goes, I think, right along with the next point about manager and employee usage, right? So as the managers and employees are enabled to do more things themselves, again, it's very key to keep that communication very open. I mean, there's nothing like honest feedback. You can't fix something if you don't know it's broken, right? So that's another very good measure as to what kind of return you're deriving. The decrease of manual intervention, of course, and again, here I want to stress, focus on business process. You make sure that your business process is a good process, and then first, that's the first thing, and then secondly, look at the technology that's there to support it, and take small measured steps. You don't have to automate everything on the first go around, on the first phase. But it's all about decreasing that manual intervention. The more you decrease it, the more return on investment you should be seeing. And then better reporting and metrics. So as you standardize, and especially like if you have global operations across many countries, standardizing at least at the level, at a so-called global level, for the key, data elements is going to enable a lot of reporting and a lot of metrics. And the more accurate, reporting and metrics you can implement and start to use throughout your company, the bigger the ROI. And then, expanding functionality. And this goes along with the quarterly releases. So again, I work, well, we all do, but especially in what I do, I work very closely with the SAP folks. And often I am involved with the SAP folks in, the sales cycle. When the customer is still evaluating, multiple software products for HRIS. And, one of the things that SAP stresses is, the fact that they do release quarterly. Now, I have been involved in some cases where from a customer's perspective, they said, well, that's a lot to keep up with, quarterly releases, and some other software product may not do it as often, and therefore their product's easier to use. And I thought, wow, that's a creative sales approach. Software changes, software is technology, and I personally feel that releasing quarterly is about right, because what you're getting there are fixes to the software. And it is software, so there's always going to be fixes, regardless of who the software vendor is, right? And then also rolling out that new functionality. And then, as Troy was explaining to you, in some cases you have to make that decision. Do I want to accept this functionality, or do I not want to accept this functionality, at least for now? But, the fact that that functionality is expanding and you can evaluate it, that is another opportunity for expanding your return on the investment. You already have the product, and now the fact that that SAP is recognizing how that product needs to grow and then pushing that out again on that quarterly basis, that presents an opportunity. And to reinforce again the level of engagement, you have to stay engaged, and you have to be aware of what that functionality is and what it offers, and then come up with a good plan of how to implement it. And again, it's having a partner to do that often will make that more consumable, because we can help guide you, we can give you insight as to what some of the other customers are doing along the same lines, and get you some good feedback. So, questions?
I'm not seeing any come in right now, Dave, but if there's any other points you wanted to touch on, now would be the time. And I'll keep you posted on questions that come in.
Okay, let me see. Maybe just a little bit more about the optimization or the SOS service. So again, the SOS service, just to kind of summarize, it encompasses support and optimization. And when we're doing the optimization, it's all about an assessment and a remediation. And with respect to the remediation, what we're really looking at is what is technically out of date, what no longer works for you, and that's what would that's going to be the focus, because that's where again you can realize the best return on any kind of investment. So optimize the configuration to make it fit better, and support the business process. So it's kind of like stabilize, optimize, and then enhance. That's really the sequence of how we go through that assessment and then the remediation that follows. Communication is always very key. Coming up with that remediation plan and then communicating it to the people that need to be involved. Always key to communicate. Support and fine tune, and then having implemented, or as you implement that remediation plan, you're gaining acceptance, and you're also gaining credibility. And then that credibility, you can leverage that with a longer term perspective and a longer term plan in a road mapping exercise. So that's kind of a sum up on my part. Anyone else or any other questions?
Yeah, Dave, I have one. And so for the assessment and remediation, how do you know when it's time to go through a full assessment and remediation?
Yeah, another good question. I guess one measure would be how long have you been in how long has your implementation been in a production status. Another thing is just business processes, or what's going on internally in your company. Have you been through, are you growing? And are you growing in different countries, or even in the same country, are you growing? And are those business processes dependent on, you know, multiple other software products where you're kind of having to stitch things together? You have multiple data models, and your reporting is becoming a struggle. If you can't accurately report, you know, something like headcount, and you're having to get that from 4 or 5 or 6 or more different sources, dump it into Excel, massage the Excel, then, you know, it might be time to take a step back and look, how can I make this better? And that's really what the assessment is all about. So the assessment, you know, is looking at your current state and making suggestions. It typically doesn't take a long time, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the key deliverable out of that is a plan. And then, you know, once that plan is articulated and documented, you know, then it's time to look at things like budget and maybe narrow it down. Okay, we got 10 things that we've identified. We can live with 6 or 7 of them, but these 3 or 4, they really cause a lot of pain, and that's where the biggest ROI can be derived. And so that's kind of the process. So hopefully that, I hope I answered your question. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have another one. So what if you're not sure what to do? Is there like a service or something that SAP offers or that Kula offers to figure that out?
Well, I mean, we cannot, you know, we're not, we always like to engage with clients and do maybe kind of a mini assessment. Typically what we do is we'll have a phone call or two, you know, with some of the key people, and we'll make sure from the Kula side that we have our key consultant, or you know, whatever areas seem to be hurting the most, we'll have those consultants on. And then we'll ask the client, you know, we'll execute a non-disclosure or whatever documents we need to in order to get access into their either test environment or their production environment. And we'll take a look, and then we'll come back with some initial findings. And that can be a fairly quick process. And you know, that first initial process, it can be very inexpensive, and in some cases, you know, if it's just a few hours, I'm not going to promise we're going to do it for free, but we have done that. So it's all about, you know, what we're really interested in is making sure that the customer is happy. And then because of our tight or very good relationship with SAP, we're always going to pull them in when we need to, and we always like to do these things, you know, together in conjunction with the SAP and SuccessFactors folks.
Okay, Dave, I have one more question for you.
Okay. Yeah.
So if a customer signs up to do an assessment, are they required to do a remediation?
They're not required. Hopefully what comes out of that assessment will be, you know, beneficial primarily for the customer, and of course also for us, because we will then understand better, you know, the issues and the problems at hand. And then, you know, taking that next step into remediation, that's a joint effort, figuring out what really is a priority. And then, you know, like I said before, budget is always a consideration, right? To make sure that, like I say, if there are 10 things identified, it's towards the end of the year, budgets are tight, well then working together and making sure that we can do what we can do for the budget allocated, and that we can, again, maximize the return.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's all the questions that I had that came through the chat. So if you guys have any other questions that you didn't get to ask or you think of later, please feel free to reach out to us. There will be some contact information on the next slide, and we will send out a recording of this webinar so you can revisit later. Also, don't forget that we have 4 handouts as well. You can access them on the attendee panel, or I will also be sending those out as in the follow-up email with the recording. So I appreciate everyone joining us today, and I hope that you got some educational value out of this. Again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us afterward. All right, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks everyone.